I pulled off the highway after 2 weeks in Brussels. That kind of sterile, soul-draining bureaucratic trip just sucks the life right out of you. Dealing with foreign ministers, signing papers with a title and a name nobody here, thankfully, ever needs to know about. And all I wanted, honestly, was the profound silence of the Sentinel, my mountain home. I built that house, every log and stone. I didn't just design the passive solar heating. I personally laid the foundation deeper than codes required, poured the concrete myself, and the air here, up in the Sierra Nevada foothills, always smells cleaner, signaling I'm finally safe, finally back on my own soil. I rounded the final bend, the one where the view always stops your breath, where the rugged beauty of the timber framing and the dark river stone chimney usually come into perfect view. But the house was gone. It wasn't just burned, where you'd see a blackened skeleton left standing. It was annihilated, just a massive, ugly brown scar on the landscape, a wasteland of shattered river stone, twisted metal, and splintered Douglas fir logs pushed into messy, smoldering piles. My heart didn't race. The shock was too complete for panic. It just seized up, dropping cold and heavy like a block of ice in my chest, because this wasn't an accident. A fire leaves ghost you can recognize. This was a demolition, a methodical, deliberate erasure, a violence imposed on my sanctuary. I stepped out, and the silence was deafening. The only sound the crunch of my heavy boots on the pulverized rock, and the air reeked of soot, hydraulic fluid, and acrid diesel. I followed the deep, muddy tracks of a massive excavator, the treads tearing up the perfectly graded gravel. Parked nearby was a flatbed truck with a cheesy, magnetic sign that seemed to mock the ruin. Pine Ridge Estates HOA Community Compliance. That name, Pine Ridge Estates HOA, hit me like a physical blow, a surge of hot, sharp fury boiling up from my gut, but I pushed it down. I'm an engineer, a former military officer. Anger is useless without data. I solve problems with facts, and I needed receipts. I immediately logged into my private encrypted server, which held all data from the 6 independent security cameras I installed. They were built to be independent of the grid and the house itself, a redundancy I now realized was prophetic. The alerts showed the precise timeline of the invasion, starting 3 days ago, a grainy image of a contractor taping a notice to my private property, no trespassing gate. The next, a massive Komatsu excavator, weighing 30 tons at least, grinding its way up my private driveway, already violating my land. Then, the demolition crew arrived at 8 a.m. sharp. The audio from the front door cam was chillingly clear, confirming the lie. Emergency compliance order, signed by the county. HOA says the guy abandoned it, and the structure's unstable. A total, blatant lie. My home was engineered, built to withstand anything the Sierra Nevada could throw at it. Every beam bolted, every joint reinforced. I watched the footage in cold, silent horror. The claw smashing the massive, triple-pane bay window in the great room. The walls crumbling like sandcastles under the relentless attack. And finally, they bulldozed the great stone fireplace, the anchor of the whole structure. That's when the cold shock broke, replaced by something much, much worse than property loss. It was under the largest, custom-quarried hearthstone of that fireplace that I had carefully buried my late wife, Clara's, ashes. We'd spent a year sourcing those stones from a specific riverbed, designing that hearth to be the heart of our home, the symbolic center where our life would continue, where our future grandkids would hang stockings. It was her memorial, my final promise to her, and now it was gone, shattered, scattered into the dirt and debris. They hadn't just destroyed property. They had reached into my past and violently desecrated a memory, a place that was sacred. The HOA, run by Vivian Sterling, was a little kingdom of petty tyranny. She'd sent me fussy, passive-aggressive notes before, like the one demanding I repaint my chimney cap from unapproved slate gray to compliant neutral beige, or the one that complained my bird feeder was attracting non-native species. I ignored them, of course, because the simple, vital fact that made this a crime was in my safe deposit box. My 40-acre parcel was never part of their HOA. I never signed their bylaws. I never agreed to their jurisdiction, and they had zero legal authority. Vivian simply saw my independent, non-conforming home sitting prominently above her beige kingdom and decided to illegally absorb it, fabricating fines and hoping to bully me into paying ghost debts. I stood there looking at the ruin, feeling the weight of the mountain and the emptiness where my home stood, and I made a quiet, definitive promise to Clara's memory. I don't make threats. I build cases. And I was about to build one hell of a case that would destroy her world. I drove straight to the El Dorado County Recorder of Deeds office, the boring beige building where legal fact resides and history is recorded. I pulled the plat maps for the entire Pine Ridge tract and the HOA's original articles of incorporation. A pleasant clerk, whom I knew from my time in local politics, handed me the documents without recognizing me out of my suit. My parcel, 40B, was clearly demarcated, legally recorded in May 2013. The HOA was officially incorporated in January 2015. I was excluded by law, by date, and by common sense. This meant the entire premise of their legal action, their very right to send me a single letter, was void from the start. That was receipt number 1, no authority. I had the legal timeline locked down. Next, I found the thick final notice in my mailbox, buried under 2 weeks of junk mail. The claim debt was over $12,000, manufactured out of thin air using their own fake rules. They were demanding payment for a non-permitted flagpole and unauthorized roofing material. This paper shield, designed to look legitimate with its heavy cardstock and aggressive red font, was the exact document they'd waved to the contractor as their supposed authorization. I drove straight to my secure storage unit, pulling out my original deed, the fire marshal's signed certificate explicitly approving the metal roofing materials for maximum fire resistance in a high-risk zone, and the stamped county permit for the flagpole. Each one was a meticulous counter receipt, signed and sealed by the county, proving every fine was a fabrication and every one of my choices was rooted in safety and legality. She had desecrated Clara's memory, and for that, she was going to pay a price that transcended mere money. She was going to pay with accountability. The next evening, I found myself in the Pine Ridge Estates Community Clubhouse for the monthly HOA meeting, arriving in simple jeans and a neutral jacket. I watched Vivian Sterling, clipboard in hand, preside over the mundane tyranny of suburban life. She corrected an elderly woman's pronunciation of amenities, sternly warned a man about the unauthorized off-white color of his driveway sealant, and droned on about the importance of community aesthetic harmony. Then she moved to new business, a thin, triumphant smile touching her lips, basking in her manufactured authority. I'm pleased to announce the successful resolution of that long-standing compliance issue up the hill. The demolition was completed 2 days ago, she announced, practically preening. The community is now safer and property values are protected. A smattering of polite, intimidated applause broke out from her loyalists. I didn't leap up. I rose slowly, deliberately, the sound of the chair legs scraping the linoleum cutting through the manufactured calm like a grinding halt. The room fell silent instantly. Vivian's smile instantly vanished, replaced by a flicker of annoyance and then confusion. "Do you have a question, sir?" she demanded, her voice carrying the practiced authority of a small-town potentate. I walked forward, every step measured, and spoke calmly. "My name is Elias Thorne. I own, or rather, own the house you're referring to." A collective, audible gasp went through the room. "I never signed your bylaws. I never agreed to be part of your association, and you demolished a home you had no jurisdiction over." Vivian recovered fast, her voice immediately hitting a high, defensive pitch. "That's preposterous. Your property was annexed years ago. You received dozens of notices. We acted on an emergency enforcement order signed by the county." She used words like annexed and enforcement to create a dense, bureaucratic smokescreen, but I wasn't a confused homeowner she could bully. I was the man who reviews and signs actual state enforcement orders. While she spoke, my eyes scanned the court bulletin board behind her and spotted a photocopy of a county letter. The seal was wrong, the watermark missing, the font was obviously incorrect. A clumsy, obvious forgery to anyone who works with state documents. Ignoring her tirade, I walked to the board, took a clear, high-resolution photograph of the forged letter and the list of fabricated fines, capturing the evidence in its public context. Then, I turned back to face her, discreetly hitting the record button on my phone. "I'm documenting the paperwork you used to justify destroying my home, Mrs. Sterling," I said evenly. "For the record, Could you please restate your name and official position on this board? She stared, sweat beginning to bead on her forehead, her carefully constructed composure dissolving as she realized her house of cards, built on fake rules, was crumbling beneath her. I left the clubhouse without another word. The legal traps were now fully set. Vivian's entire claim rested on three pillars: authority, process, and necessity. I was going to dismantle all three so completely that nothing would be left but dust. The next morning, I was with a structural engineer, Milo Chun, a trusted colleague from my engineering days, at the rubble. After 2 hours of meticulous examination, soil samples, laser measurements, and extensive drone footage of the site and the slope below, he laid out the final crushing blow. Eli, this wasn't just a demolition. This was criminal negligence. They destabilized the entire slope, not just the foundation. Look at this. Milo pointed to deep fissures and significant earth displacement along the crest. When they ripped out your engineered retaining walls and foundation without a proper plan or geological survey, they essentially created a clear, immediate potential landslide zone for the houses directly below in the HOA. She had endangered the very community she claimed to protect in her arrogant rush for control. That was receipt number 3, public hazard and criminal negligence. That afternoon, a digital forensics friend traced the forged county letter I'd photographed. He not only confirmed the incorrect seals and fonts, but provided hard data. The metadata proved it was created last Tuesday at precisely 11:14 p.m. on Vivian Sterling's personal home network, linked directly to her specific software registration. Digital proof. She had personally and knowingly created the entire fraudulent document, impersonating a government official. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the key that unlocked the felony charges. That was receipt number 4, digital forgery. The night before Vivian's emergency HOA meeting, I sent an anonymous, explosive email to local news stations, the state attorney's office, and the county paper. HOA illegally demolishes private residence, forges county documents, and creates landslide risk. Attached was Milo's high-definition drone footage, clearly illustrating the terrifying land erosion and the immediate danger looming above the subdivision. By morning, 2 local news vans and a newspaper reporter were camped outside the clubhouse, cameras ready. The attention was guaranteed. I walked into the packed meeting, thin manila folder in hand, and stood beside the podium. My name is Elias Thorne, and I'm the man whose home your HOA president illegally destroyed. I began projecting the receipts, the plat map proving zero jurisdiction, the certified title report proving no legal debt, the side-by-side of the forged county letter highlighting the incorrect seal, and the metadata tracing it directly to Vivian. The residents went from murmuring confusion to stunned horror. Then I played the security video of the demolition crew laughing as they tore down my home. The room was frozen. The facts were undeniable. I turned off the projector and looked directly at Vivian. She was ashen, her composure utterly gone. "Mrs. Sterling," I said, my voice dropping to an almost dangerous level, "you have committed fraud, trespassed, destroyed private property, and in the process," I gestured to Milo's drone footage, which was still showing the damaged slope, "you have endangered every single home at the bottom of that hill with a man-made landslide risk, all to satisfy your own personal need for power." I paused, letting the magnitude of her crimes sink in completely before delivering the final, catastrophic receipt. "There's one more thing you should know. When I'm not up on that mountain, I have another residence. It's in the state capital, an office I occupy 5 days a week." I watched her eyes bulge, the color draining from her face, her jaw slack. "My name is Elias Thorne, and as of last week, I'm the sitting governor of this state." The silence was absolute. Jaws literally dropped across the room. Vivian stared, her world collapsing in real time, realizing she had picked a fight not with a disgruntled homeowner, but with the highest elected official, a man who knows exactly how state law and documents work. Dana Morales, the junior board member, finally stood up, hands shaking, pointing directly at Vivian. "I knew it," she whispered, her voice gaining strength and clarity. "She lied about the annexation papers and threatened me when I questioned her. I resign, effective immediately, and I will cooperate fully with the authorities." Dana walked out, pushing past the reporters slipping inside. Vivian, utterly shattered, turned and fled through a side door, saying nothing, her scepter of power finally broken. I looked at the stunned residents. "You forged state documents to destroy a state official's private residence," I said quietly. "That's a felony." "Several, actually." The public humiliation was complete. The legal accounting was next. My legal team filed a civil suit, built entirely on the 4 receipts I had methodically gathered. In the courtroom, my attorney, Maria, simply walked the judge through the case one binder at a time. Clinical, methodical, irrefutable, presenting facts, not emotion. The verdict was swift and total. The HOA was liable on all counts. The final judgment was a devastating $5.5 million, covering the full replacement value of the home, loss of all personal property, legal fees, punitive damages, and, critically, the geological remediation of the mountainside. As the civil hearing concluded, a bailiff quietly entered the courtroom. The district attorney, armed with my evidence, had filed criminal charges, and we heard the quiet, cold click of handcuffs as they led Vivian away for forgery of a public document and felony destruction of property. I didn't feel triumph, only a quiet, somber sense of order being restored. Vivian wasn't a movie villain. She was a small person who craved control so much she was willing to destroy things to get it. Her punishment was the natural, documented consequence of her choices. 1 year later, I stood on the deck of my new home. The Sentinel was a near-perfect replica, stronger, reinforced with steel, honoring Clara's memory. The HOA's insurance, facing an impossible legal fight, paid out the judgment without delay. I ran my hand over the great stone fireplace, which now held a simple bronze plaque, Clara's house, built with love, rebuilt with purpose. Her ashes were encased safely in a permanent vault within the foundation itself, inviolable. The HOA's multi-million-dollar judgment and slope remediation costs forced a massive special assessment on every single homeowner, a one-time levy on top of their tripled annual dues. Faced with this immediate and stark financial reality, they finally woke up. Dana Morales led a movement, using the court filings to expose the HOA's corruption, not just Vivian's actions, but the board's negligent oversight that allowed it to happen. 3 months after the case, they forced a vote and dissolved the Pine Ridge Estates HOA entirely, dismantling the whole structure of petty tyranny. They traded rules for genuine neighborly relationships, organizing community events instead of compliance inspections. Vivian Sterling lost everything: her power, her reputation, her home. She was found guilty of forgery and served 6 months in a county facility. I found my own peace, not in her downfall, but in the painstaking rebuilding. I stand on my deck now, my American flag on its fully permitted flagpole waving gently. The house is quiet, the mountain is quiet, everything is exactly as it should be. But here's the controversial part, the question I always think about. Was it right that every single resident had to pay for Vivian Sterling's $5.5 million judgment, including those elderly couples who just wanted quiet living and had no idea about the forgery? They lost their HOA, their dues tripled, all because of the arrogance of one person they allowed to rule them. Did the community get justice, or did they simply get the consequence of their own complacency for letting a tyrant hold the clipboard for so long? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you were a resident of Pine Ridge Estates, would you have blamed the governor for going after the HOA, or would you have thanked him for tearing down a corrupt system? Tell me where you're watching from, and what you would have done if someone had destroyed your sanctuary.